Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video, I'd like to discuss the implications for Cabinet Minister and close Liz Truss ally Therese Coffey blocking the publication of several reports into the running of her department, the Department of Work and Pensions. And yes, I know this is a feature of Boris Johnson's government to either block reports or just rewrite them. Boris Johnson had a report commissioned into racism in this country. He didn't like it. So he rewrote it to basically say there is no such thing as racism in this country. So it makes a nonsense out of the process. So why is this one particularly noteworthy? Because it's likely hiding the government's wholesale killing of many of the most vulnerable people in our society. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So in recent years, the Department for Work and Pensions has badly let down the people it should be helping. In many ways, this is the most important government department for our most vulnerable. If you have a disability, whether temporary or permanent, that means accessing work is a barrier, you need the Department for Work and Pensions. If you're working full time, but on our badly misnamed living wage, really slave wage, you need the department to access universal credit to top it up to manageable levels. A particularly cruel system because it makes it sound like these hard-working people are on benefits when in reality the taxes are covering the profits of businesses. If you'd like to be more productive but you struggle to get the childcare needed to work more hours, you need the Department for Work and Pensions. If you're struggling to find work at all or you're struggling to find enough work, you need the Department for Work and Pensions. If you're a pensioner, you need the Department for Work and Pensions. This is the government department that has a choice to make the lives of our most financially vulnerable people either easier or impossible. And under this Tory government have opted for the latter. Not only are their rules a huge barrier to many people, but they even break their own rules. We've heard lots of shocking stories over the years, quotas of sanctions to keep people off universal credit. So officials in the department have to find excuses to sanction a certain number of claimants to keep the overall numbers down, to make the government look better. Or if people have a medical condition and there's lots of doctors' notes on this medical condition, their unqualified staff come up with some ridiculous test to ignore the medical diagnoses and say, no, actually you're fine. We've seen stories of people literally dying because of decisions made by this department. People who've taken their own lives because they were sanctioned and couldn't afford to pay the bills. There have been cases of seriously ill patients in hospital being told to discharge themselves to attend a meeting with the DWP or their benefits would be stopped. This has led to multiple deaths. The purpose of the department is supposed to be to provide a safety net for the most vulnerable in society. But all too often these days, it has a stronger semblance to a Tory version of the final solution. But all government departments are scrutinised by cross-party groups of MPs called select committees. This requires investigations to be conducted into the impacts of various government policies, reports prepared and published, and then questions for the ministers and senior civil servants in the department. But Therese Coffey, who's a bit of a bugger for not actually attending many of these select committee hearings, is now reported to be blocking the publication of 5 reports into her department. It includes research into such things as the causes of death of claimants and the impact of sanctions. Now here's the thing. Corruption is a problem in politics around the world and throughout history. Corrupt people naturally gravitate towards a career in politics just as much as those who want to genuinely make the world better. Unfortunately, the corrupt tend to be rather better at persuading people to support them because they will make ridiculous promises and lie through their teeth. So there's always a serious danger of corruption at all levels of government. And how do you tackle corruption? It's often said that the best counter to corruption is transparency. Simple enough. If there's full transparency about the dealings of any politician, it becomes almost impossible to act corruptly. If people know that someone is funding a politician and that the actions that politician takes are in the commercial interests of that donor, people see the conflict of interest. If a government department puts policies in place that cost tens of thousands of lives and a report is published and publicised that reflects this, people will demand action. Most people can be a bit self-centred, but they're ultimately decent. So given that transparency is the best counter to corruption, what are we to conclude from the following behaviour in the Department for Work and Pensions? First, the Secretary of State routinely fails to attend meetings with the Select Committee in Parliament. These are elected MPs. Second, the Secretary of State blocking the publication of reports whose purpose is partly to investigate the way government policies may be directly leading to the deaths and unnecessary suffering of people. I would suggest that the obvious conclusion is that this department does not welcome scrutiny of its actions by the democratically elected members of our national parliament. And can you imagine how the media would react if a non-Tory government behaved in this way? If a Labour Secretary of State refused to attend meetings with MPs, or if they blocked reports into the impacts of their policies? It'd be front page news. And it would be front page news with the most inflammatory rhetoric that their wordsmiths could come up with. But because this is a Tory government, you wouldn't even know about it, other than a report in The Guardian or lower circulation specialist journals like the Disability News Service. Because wherever you look these days at the workings of the UK government, you just see the most terrible evil, held in check only because they've not yet completely warped the perceptions of crucial voters. But they are working towards that. I look at social attitudes in this country over the past decade, and I think we're regressing. The Home Office has made peaceful protest illegal and is breaking human rights laws to deport asylum seekers already fleeing war or persecution to a country that its own reports describes as human rights abusers. The Justice Department is working to abolish human rights laws in the UK, and whose courts closures mean that rape victims are having to wait 4 or more years for their cases to come to trial if they've resolved to go through all that. Deaf for allowing water companies to dump raw sewage into our waterways. Department for Health and Social Care, which has accelerated its privatisation of the remaining services under public control. In fact, now, healthcare policy decisions in the NHS are going to be made by people with a commercial interest in private healthcare. At this point, we may as well consider the NHS to have basically been privatised now. The list goes on. The Conservatives have always seemed to me to be the party that works for the benefit of those who don't actually need much help from the state to live a comfortable life, and who abandon those who actually need support. But it's like what we have here, which traditional Conservatives don't even recognise, is a version which has lost its anchors to any semblance of principles. But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. I hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.